My name is Lindiwe Kumalo and I'm the Acting Secretary of the African Commission. I'll be your moderator for today's session. This session is the African Commission's 68th ordinary session, convened in terms of Article 64(2) of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, read together with Rule 27 of the African Commission's Rules of Procedure 2020. The Commission at the outset wishes to thank Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. Your Excellency Bankole Adeoye, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the African Union Commission, representing His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Honorable Solomon Deso, Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Excellencies, Ministers of State Parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Honorable Ndaisenga Joseph, Chairperson of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Your Excellency Eamon Gilmore, European Union Special Representative for Human Rights. Honorable Vice Chairperson and Commissioners of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Dr. Elasto Hilarious Mugwadi, Vice Chairperson of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions and Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission of Zimbabwe. Mrs. Hannah Foster, Executive Director of the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies and spokesperson of the NGO Forum. Distinguished delegates of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Representatives of national human rights institutions. Representatives of international organizations, representatives of non-governmental organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the 68th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. At this point, before we start our proceedings, I wish to request Your Excellencies, representatives of state parties, African Union organs, and all organizations here present to assume a solemn posture for the observance of the African Union Anthem. Thank you. In a short while, I will take you through the order of proceedings. However, before I do so, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, kindly permit me to mention that since the last time we met in ordinary session, at the African Commission's 67th ordinary session, two great servants of the African Commission have since passed on. The first is Honorable Commissioner Ndiame Gaye, who was a member of the Commission and chairperson of the Working Group on Death Penalty, Extrajudicial Summary, Arbitrary Killings, and Forced Disappearances in Africa. He also served as a member of the Committee for the Prevention of Torture in Africa and was a member of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. He further was the African Commission's country rapporteur on the promotion of human rights in the Central African Republic, in Guinea, Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Sierra Leone, and Uganda. Also, the Commission has lost Professor Christoph Haynes, who was a professor of law at the University of Pretoria and a member of the UN Human Rights Committee. He served as a member of the African Commission's Working Group on Death Penalty, Extrajudicial Summary and Arbitrary Killings, and Forced Disappearances in Africa. May I ask, on behalf of the Commission and upon their instruction, that at this point we all observe a moment of silence in their honor. May their souls rest in eternal peace. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, we would now proceed with our program. As this is a virtual session and the Commission continues to try to adapt to a new normal, I would like to share a few guidelines with you on how to make this virtual meeting on the Zoom platform more effective and smooth flowing. First, may I request all distinguished panelists to ensure that their microphones are muted and that they remain muted throughout the proceedings unless the floor has been yielded to you. Second, to access language interpretation services, kindly select your desired language from the menu at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For English, select English. For French, select French. For Portuguese, select Portuguese. For Arabic, select Arabic. When you speak, kindly ensure that your channel is set to the language in which you are speaking in order to avoid channel overlap with interpretation. As there's often a time lag between the sound transmission of the language of the speaker and the interpretation, kindly be patient and bear with unavoidable delays in interpretation. Please also wait for a couple of seconds before concluding that there is no interpretation. Should you be disconnected from the proceedings for any reason, kindly contact the IT host, Mr. Etwell Karikoga, for assistance. You may reach him through the private chat link on your screen. Should you encounter any challenge with respect to interpretation, again, please use the chat link to communicate this. The IT help team will immediately assist you to reconnect to the proceedings. Please ensure that multiple devices connected to these proceedings are not active in the same room at the same time, as this may cause echo and other disturbances. And finally, kindly accept our apologies in advance and bear with us for any technical mishaps that may have been overlooked, that may be beyond our control as we strive to improve our delivery to our stakeholders. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me now take you to the order, through the order of proceedings, which will be slightly different from the one that was published due to a few unforeseen circumstances. We will commence first with the statement of the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the African Union Commission, which is delivered on behalf of the chairperson of the African Union Commission. Thereafter, we will have the statement of the spokesperson for the NGO Forum. This will be followed by a statement by Vice Chairperson of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions. Then we will have a statement of by the European Union Special Representative for Human Rights. This will be followed by a pre-recorded statement of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. After that, we will have a statement by the chairperson of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. And this will be followed by a statement by the President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. After that, we will have a pre-recorded statement of the representative of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And finally, the chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights will deliver his statement and declare the 68th ordinary session open. This would then bring the proceedings of the opening ceremony to an end. It is now my singular honor to invite His Excellency Bankole Adeoye, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the African Union Commission, to deliver a statement on behalf of His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency Adeoye, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Gambia, and the representative of the President of the Republic of the Gambia. Excellencies, ministers and members of the Parliament of the Republic of Gambia, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Dr. Solomon Deso, Chairperson, African Commission on Human and People's Rights, distinguished representatives, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me at the outset to sincerely express, on behalf of the chairperson of the Commission, to the management and staff of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, our heartfelt appreciation for the invitation to this 68th ordinary session. Permit me to also join in appreciating the delegates and participants for taking time to attend this historic session. I want to congratulate my brother and friend, Dr. Solomon Deso, chairperson of the commission and his fellow commissioners, as well as our acting executive secretary, for their unwavering commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights and people's rights in Africa. Excellencies, you will agree with me that the past 2 years from 2019 to date have been very challenging, to say the least, across the globe and particularly in our continent. The COVID-19 pandemic has challenged virtually every sector of our society. It has also been a challenge because of the meticulous and pragmatic manner with which we had to deal with the African Union human rights system. We need to continue to approach and respond to human rights issues in a way that we will be assured of the promotion and protection of human rights. While human rights abound in our continent, as in many other parts of the globe, it is important to utilize this opportunity to commend the member states for the ongoing human rights transformation in our continent. I want to highlight the establishment of the operationalization of the Gambian National Human Rights Institution by the government of His Excellency President Adama Barrow, which we are pleased to be part of. I commend the people and government of Gambia for this impressive development. I want to reassure them that the African Union Commission will continue to promote similar support for other human rights institutions when and where necessary. Excellencies, the African human rights system has come of age. It is comprehensive and all-encompassing in its mandate and its focus. The African Charter on Human Rights provides for social, cultural, and economic rights, including the right to development, cultural heritage, and protection of artifacts. It is for this reason that we underscore the need for Africa to preserve and strengthen positive African cultural values in their relations with other members of the society, in the spirit of tolerance, in the spirit of dialogue and consultation, and in general, to contribute to the promotion of more moral, economic well-being of the society. This is evidence to demonstrate that there's a strong correlation in the mandate of the African Union, and its Commission on Human and People's Rights, with the theme of the year on arts, culture, heritage, levers for building the Africa we want. It is from the above, including the UN recognition of the significance of cultural rights and heritage, hence the Human Rights Council Resolution 32/20 of 2016 on cultural rights and the protection of cultural heritage. It is from the above, therefore, and the conclusions therein that we expect from this engagement that will be valid in certain cultural contexts. It is important for us to emphasize that our continent is one with diverse cultures and heritage, and there must be home, and there must be borne in mind the need for the advocacy that promotes and protects all rights in their entirety. Excellencies, for us at the Commission, all hands are on deck as we currently mobilize all the necessary resources to operationalize the African Union Human Rights Memorial. This is towards the realization of the theme of this year. This memorial project will not only help to preserve some of Africa's human rights heritage or past evidence of human rights violations, including colonialism, apartheid, and genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. This memorial will also serve as awareness creation against human rights abuses to our teeming youth population and future generation. I conclude, therefore, Excellencies, by reiterating that the promotion and the protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms will be a collective responsibility of all of us. We must therefore join hands with the African Union and the African Commission for Human and People's Rights to promote and protect these rights, particularly Africa's cultural practices, art promotion, and very rich heritage. I wish you all successful and fruitful deliberations during this 68th ordinary session, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Commission thanks His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed for his insightful statement and for Commissioner Bankole's delivery of it. Thank you. I now wish to call upon the spokesperson of the NGO Forum, Mrs. Hannah Foster, to deliver a statement on behalf of African NGOs. You have the floor, Madam Foster.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Your Excellency, Ambassador Bankole Adeyi, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, representing the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Dr. Solomon Ayele Darso, Chairperson of the African Commission. I would wish to request to stand on existing protocols to be able to at least highlight some of the messages that I have been asked to deliver. All protocols respectfully observed. On behalf of my colleagues of the Forum on the Participation of NGOs in the 68th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, it is indeed an honor and a privilege as the spokesperson to deliver this statement on this auspicious occasion. Allow me at the onset to acknowledge and thank the Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Derso, and members of the African Commission for affording us yet another opportunity to make a statement. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in the continuing predicament brought on by the pandemic, COVID-19, the Forum on the Participation of NGOs in the 68th Ordinary Session of the African Commission was held virtually once more and was organized and facilitated by the African Center, Secretariat of the Forum of NGOs, in collaboration with the Commission from the 12th and 13th of April. The deliberations this time round were conducted with simultaneous interpretation in Arabic, English, French, and for the second time in Portuguese. The forum was officially opened by Mr. Guy Cyril Tapoko, Director of Governance and Democracy at the African Union on behalf of His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeyi, Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union Commission. The opening ceremony was also addressed by Honorable Solomon Ayele Derso and Bakari Shafi at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as Mr. Marcel Akpovo, from the same office. Once more, the forum was guided by the draft agenda of the Commission, and in a bid to contribute to the discussion and subsequent implementation of the AU 2021 theme, Arts, Culture, and Heritage Leverages for Building the Africa We Want. With the pandemic still a nightmare, COVID-19 and its impact of vulnerable groups was kept on the agenda with a view to developing post-COVID strategies for a more meaningful engagement and participation of civil society and other stakeholders. We will endeavor to share the full report, which has one country resolution on Benin, one thematic resolution on the death penalty, as well as 7 thematic recommendations. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I crave your indulgence to highlight just a few of the issues that were raised. As eloquently posited by Chairman Derso, a post-COVID era is not yet on the horizon, considering that increasing numbers of infections and the efforts being made to manage the pandemic is still daunting. Lockdowns persist in many countries, with many commercial flights halted to alleviate the tedious challenges associated with tracing and limiting the spread of the coronavirus. The world is a different place in April 2021. The impact made by COVID-19 pandemic in its second wave has been devastating, with direct loss of life and burden of sickness stretching the weak health systems to its limit, with severe economic crisis coupled with collapsing international trade. Moreover, the anti-human rights and democratic forces have continued to take advantage of the crisis to further assert and situate their authoritarian regimes as leaders more capable of protecting public health and, of course, their citizens. On the theme of arts, culture, and heritage for the realization of human rights, Honorable Derso emphasized that culture and heritage are synonymous with identity. Africa, as a unique continent with a rich cultural heritage, stands tall in this regard. Arts, culture, and heritage are the foundation for development and developed society and are critical in the building and maintenance of democracy. The linkage and interdependence, yet distinct relationship, cannot be overemphasized, considering that they are mutually reinforcing for the attainment of development, human rights, and peace. There are legal frameworks to protect these rights as enshrined in the Cultural Charter for Africa, the Charter for African Cultural Renaissance, and specifically Article 27 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, Article 19 of the Maputo Protocol, and Article 7 of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. The UNESCO Declaration on Cultural Diversity, adopted, has also indicated and in its preamble reaffirmed that the diffusion of culture and the education of humanity for justice and liberty are indispensable to the dignity of man and constitute a sacred duty which all nations must fulfill in a spirit of mutual assistance and concern. Moreover, the declaration posits that the globalization process, facilitated by rapid development of new information and communication technologies, though representing a challenge for cultural diversity, as creating the conditions for reviewed dialogue among cultures and civilization. In reviewing the situation of human rights and democracy on the continent, the forum took note of reports of the ongoing challenges to the enjoyment of human rights in many countries on the continent, especially at this time of COVID, and as well as the impact on its implementation. From all parts of the continent, human rights violations have remained a major cause for concern in most countries, especially the freedom of assembly and association, which has also created a lot of restrictions, internet restrictions, criminalization of bloggers, continue to hinder the independence and freedom of journalists and like-minded groups. The forum asserted that a lot needs to be done as many African countries continue to face insecurity, violence, terror attacks, and the violations continues aggravated by the restrictions. But we see disease, unemployment rise, arbitrary detentions, and judicial killings, leading to the escalation of violence in some of our countries. Mali is one good example of such countries. With the emphasis on those countries whose state reports will be considered at this session, namely Benin, Malawi, and Niger, the forum congratulates these 3 countries, and we therefore call on the African Commission to continue to encourage those countries with outstanding reports to diligently meet their reporting obligations. The session also on the status of implementation of the African Commission Decision 276 of 03, a landmark decision of the African Commission concerning the indigenous peoples of Kenya, the Endorese. It is to be noted that only 1 out of all the recommendations made was implemented. As a cultural group whose land has been taken away, no replacement was made, no compensation, no royalties, no effective benefit sharing supportive of the Endorese was designed, among others. Although a task force was set up, not much was achieved before the term of the force elapsed. Lack of political will was cited, which has further eroded their rights, decreased their livelihoods, negatively impacting on their participation in policy decision-making, and led to non-safeguard of their communities. During this year of art, culture, and heritage, we believe that the Commission needs to urge the government of Kenya and other countries that do have indigenous peoples to develop an inventory of indigenous peoples and work towards protecting these vulnerable groups. In addition, a benefit sharing legislation for communities should be passed to strengthen the protection mechanism of indigenous people and to ensure their inclusion in these processes. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me on behalf of the forum to express our shock and sadness on the passing of 4 personalities who have in various ways contributed to the work of the African Commission over the years. As has been mentioned by the chair of the occasion, they are the recently elected Commissioner Ndame Gueye from Senegal, Professor Christophe Heinz from South Africa, as well as Mr. Aljuma Sissoko of the Mauritanian Association of Refugees in Senegal, and Mr. Innocent Chukuma, founder of Clean and Ford Foundation Regional Officer. As we extend our sincere condolences to the African Commission through the Honorable Chairperson and to their families of the deceased, we pray for the repose of their peaceful repose of their souls. Your Excellencies, Honorable Chairperson and members of the Commission, distinguished guests, on behalf of the participants of the forum, on the participation of NGOs in the work of the 68th Ordinary Session of the Commission, we look forward to closer collaboration, and we wish you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Vice Chairperson, and all the commissioners of this august body, best wishes for a fruitful session. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Madam Foster, for your statement, for its reflections, and for the continued support of the forum to the Commission's work and the advancement of the promotion and protection of human rights on the African continent. I would now like to invite the Vice President of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions and Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission of Zimbabwe, Dr. Elasto Hilarious Mugwadi, to deliver his statement. Dr. Mugwadi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Your Excellencies, allow me to associate myself with the protocols that have already been observed by distinguished speakers before me.
Excuse me, Dr. Mugwadi, just to disturb you slightly, if you could just adjust your camera. It's slightly not aligned so that we can see you. We can't see you too well. We see just the top of your head. Could you just lower your camera slightly? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You may proceed. Your microphone, sir. Your microphone, Dr. Mugwadi. Microphone, please.
My apologies, Madam Chair. Am I audible this time? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible and we can see you. Thank you so much. You may proceed.
Most welcome. Thank you very much. As I had indicated, allow me, Madam Chair, to associate myself with the protocols already observed by speakers before me. On behalf of the Network of African National Human Rights Institutions, I feel greatly honored to address this 68th ordinary session of the African Commission on Human and the People's Rights. The 68th session is taking place 27 years since the 1994 Rwandan genocide of Tutsis, in which more than 800,000 Tutsis were systematically butchered in the 100 days onslaught. Other atrocities included torture, maiming, rape, and defilement, mostly of women. Although Rwanda has reason to prove to the world that a failed past does not deter a bright future, all measures should be put in place to prevent a repeat in Africa or anywhere else for that matter of similar atrocities. Our collective strength will not be judged on our performance on recovery, but on prevention of grave, catastrophic, and irreversible events like the genocide against the Tutsis. We say never again should this happen in Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, crimes against humanity and other atrocities were the reasons the African human rights mechanisms were established to complement other institutional measures in the dispensation of justice at the sub-regional and regional levels. NANRI, being a regional board of national human rights institutions, has found it necessary and meaningful to bring together local actors to strengthen their working relations for the benefit of our common rights holders. The 68th ordinary session should therefore be an opportunity to evaluate the progress we are making and also identify gaps and opportunities for further collaboration in fulfilling our broad human rights mandate. Ladies and gentlemen, from the agenda of the 68th session, it is gratifying to note that matters relating to the rights of women are given center stage. State reports and other discourses have also prioritized women because of the central and the progressive role they play in shaping African society and in the Africa we want, as envisaged in Agenda 2063 of the African Union. In this regard, I am pleased to report that members of the network of African National Human Rights Institutions held the second NHRI's forum on April 8 to 9 and discussed the role of national human rights institutions in promoting the realization of indigenous women's rights in Africa. The virtual meeting was held in the context of the African Union's theme for the year 2021, which is Arts, Culture and Heritage, Levers for Building the Africa We Want. In the discussions, it was clear that Africa is not short of legal and other forms of frameworks for promoting and protecting the rights of women. In addition to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, there is the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of women in Africa, called the Maputo Protocol, and various national legal provisions relating to the rights of indigenous women. Although the Maputo Protocol enjoys ratification by 42 member states, reporting on implementation and fulfillment has been very low. Reporting on the Maputo Protocol remains minimal, notwithstanding the fact that millions of women are displaced across the continent due to armed conflicts and kidnappings as brides for terrorists and the goods for trade by human trafficking syndicates and the weapons of war in the form of rape and defilement. Indigenous women disproportionately suffer in these situations because of their vulnerability and operation of our archaic patriarchal social systems, as well as offensive cultural practices. The outcomes of the forum, including its declaration and action plan, will be officially shared with the African Commission in due course. Ladies and gentlemen, away from the Maputo Protocol, NANRI expresses concerns over the deteriorating human rights situation on the continent, particularly increased the armed conflicts and intensified terrorist activities in old and new spots across Africa. The Boko Haram in Nigeria has been targeting innocent and defenseless students in learning institutions who are abducted, raped, or killed. Another barbaric Islamic group is reigning terror in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province, where dozens of locals and international expatriates were recently killed following the overrunning of Palma by the ISIS-linked Al-Shabaab terror group, which has claimed responsibility for the attack. All this has caused turmoil and a limited enjoyment of basic fundamental rights, leading to massive internal displacements of the people. We are also concerned by the situations in Cameroon and Ethiopia, where governments are on the offensive against armed groups. In Ethiopia, forces involved have been accused of excessive use of force and other gross human rights violations. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 health crisis, which has diverted the attention of state and the non-state human rights actors and limited their movement through observance of preventive and containment protocols. As a continent, we cannot pride in Agenda 2063 of a peaceful and prosperous Africa when institutions of good governance, accountability, and peace enablers remain stooges and caricatures of what they are meant to be, as impunity thrives and also drives state actions. Distinguished participants, for this to change, partnership between and among state and the non-state actors becomes a critical sine qua non remedy. At the NANRI level, we have developed a quick reference handbook and a number of tools on human rights defenders, including a regional national action plan, a national action plan template, and a short, medium, and long-term strategic methods for addressing reprisals. We appeal for technical and financial partnership in implementing outcomes of these plans and engagements. We also call on states to not only support NHRIs in ensuring they deliver on their mandates, but also allow the other non-state actors to work, as this contributes to helping the states fulfill their obligations. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we reaffirm as NANRI our commitment to deepening our partnership with the African Commission and the other organs of the African Union towards an Africa that treasures, invests, and secures its today and tomorrow in empowering its women and girls. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mugwadi, for delivering the statement of NANRI. The role of NHRIs continues to be a key pillar of the strategy of the Commission, and the Commission appreciates your collaboration. Thank you. I now wish to invite the European Union, a special representative for human rights, His Excellency Eamon Gilmore, to make his statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, representatives of the Government of the Gambia, Honourable Commissioner Bankole Adoye, Honourable Dr. Solomon Derso, Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Honourable Justice Ore, President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, Honourable Desenga Joseph, Chairperson of the African Committee on the Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, Honourable Members of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Honourable Judges, representatives of the African National Human Rights Institutions, representatives of UN agencies, representatives of civil society, Excellencies, members of the diplomatic community, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to be with you today and to address the opening ceremony of this 68th session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. This year is particularly special as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the adoption of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The African Union and the European Union have a strong and long-standing relationship of peer-to-peer partnership and cooperation on human rights and democracy. We share the same values and we pursue a common goal, which is to ensure the enjoyment of all human rights by all without discrimination of any kind. Our annual Human Rights Dialogue is a concrete demonstration of the seriousness of our commitment to promote and protect human rights on both continents and worldwide. With the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, our daily work to promote and protect human rights has become significantly more challenging. The pandemic has amplified long-standing human rights concerns. We have seen states strengthening their surveillance powers, reducing the civic and democratic space, harassing journalists and human rights defenders, restricting freedom of expression and freedom of the press. We have also seen that violence against women, including domestic violence, has worsened. To protect life and health, we need to ensure that many rights, including access to information, to safe drinking water, to food and to adequate housing. And that is why human rights must be kept at the heart in the response to and recovery from the pandemic. These issues were discussed at our Human Rights Dialogue in December 2020, and I had the pleasure for the second time to co-chair with Commissioner Samate. I particularly valued the participation of all of the African Union human rights organs, and specifically the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, which has been critical to the success of the dialogue. In November last year, the 27 member states of the European Union approved a new action plan on human rights and democracy for the period 2020 to 2024. The action plan is a new compass for the European Union's policy with partner countries and regional organizations. While this action plan is external in focus, it must be consistent with what we do at home. No country or region has a perfect record on human rights and democracy, including within the European Union. The promotion and protection of human rights must always start at home. The action plan will be complemented by a new internal European democracy action plan, as well as our new internal and external frameworks on gender equality and, of course, the rule of law mechanism. The new European Union Global Human Rights Sanctions regime is also reinforcing European Union action in the field of human rights. As the European Union Special Representative for Human Rights, I have been working closely with our special representatives for the Sahel and for the Horn of Africa to address the serious humanitarian and human rights situation in the Sahel and in Ethiopia. The European Union has called for respect for international human rights law and international humanitarian law, protection of civilians and humanitarian access. The European Union has expressed concern for the lack of accountability, and in this regard called for independent and impartial investigations into alleged violations. The European Union welcomes the decision of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights to conduct an inquiry into alleged human rights abuses and violations in Tigray. We all know that respecting human rights is not a political choice for countries or governments. It is a legal obligation rooted in international and regional human rights instruments, such as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Let the 40th anniversary of the Charter be a year when renewed commitment to human rights is made and human rights are fully realized for all human beings with no discrimination based on any ground in Africa, in Europe, and around the world. We look forward to our continuing cooperation with the African Union, and we are at our strongest and most resilient when we work together. Thank you for the honor of participating in your opening session, and I wish you all the best for the important discussions in the coming days. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you sincerely, Your Excellency, for your statement. The EU continues to be a valued partner of the African Commission, and we thank you for refreshing your commitment to mutual objectives. Thank you so much. At this stage, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now hear the pre-recorded statement of Her Excellency Michelle Bachelet, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Commissioners, distinguished delegates, I'm honored to join you for the second time and participate in this opening of the 68th session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. At the outset, allow me to express my deepest condolences for the recent and untimely passing on the 11th of March 2021 of Honorable Commissioner Diame Gaye. May his soul rest in peace. My office continues to greatly value the partnership with the Commission, as is manifest in our joint Memorandum of Understanding. I am confident that we will continue together and through our respective mandates in a complementary manner to address ongoing and emerging thematic and country situations of mutual concern in Africa. We share the vision of the Agenda 2063, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice and the rule of law, for all without discrimination. The past year has brought very particular global challenges to human rights protection for us all. As millions of lives have been lost resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, my office has also documented serious human rights violations resulting from the enforcement of COVID-19 restrictive measures, including arbitrary arrests and detentions, the excessive use of force and unlawful killings by law enforcement personnel, and the military in some countries. Restrictions on the right to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly and association resulting in a shrinking of civic space. We have seen increased reports of sexual and gender-based violence against women and girls, including domestic violence. The pandemic has also resulted in restrictions on the right to education, freedom of religion and belief, with the closure of schools and places of worship, as well as loss of income opportunities and food insecurity for the region. I recognize the dedication shown by the scientific and medical communities and those funding scientific research to fast-track the development of vaccines against the pandemic, but I continue to advocate for international solidarity towards a global, coordinated effort to ensure access to vaccine for everyone who needs it. This is in line with the imperative of leaving no one behind, equality and non-discrimination, as the most effective, sustainable, and response to the crisis without undermining progress on Agendas 2030 and 2063. Honorable Chairperson, the African Union theme for the year 2021, Arts, Culture, and Heritage, Levers for Building the Africa We Want, seems particularly poignant to the challenges that we face in the current pandemic. It offers an opportunity to embrace vast cultural richness of Africa and to reaffirm the fundamental role of the arts, culture, and heritage in shaping democratic societies and in building back better post-pandemic. It is critical to recognize the role of artists, of culture, and of a strong African heritage in inspiring society, in bringing people together, keeping them connected, and uplifting their spirits in times of isolation and lockdowns. Equally, artistic and creative expression is a part of freedom of expression, as also enshrined in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and must be protected against any form of pressure, intimidation, or censorship, including during the current pandemic. Just as the rights of everyone to take part in cultural life without discrimination and to artistic and scientific freedoms are guaranteed by international law, the neglect, damage, falsification, and destruction of cultural heritage, especially in times of crisis, affect human rights. In order to achieve Aspiration 5 of Agenda 2063, which envisions, and I will quote, an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values, and ethics, end of quote, it is important to harness the potential of Africa's cultural diversity for combating climate change, emphasizing the positive potential of cultural rights to serve as critical tools in responding to the climate emergency. As outlined by the Human Rights Council's Special Rapporteur on Cultural Rights, for promoting gender equality, including the role of women as protectors of cultural heritage and addressing cultural practices that may violate the right of women and girls, for exploring the relationship between culture, arts, and new technology, and for mobilizing African youth to design our cultural heritage of the future. Discussions at two events held recently in the margins of this 68th session, namely the Second National Human Rights Institution forums on the role of NRIs in promoting the realization of indigenous women's cultural rights in Africa, and the NGO Forum on the Africa We Want, the role of arts, culture, and heritage in the realization of human rights and democracy, will surely make important contributions for deepening your reflections on this year's theme. Allow me to conclude my brief remarks by congratulating you under the able leadership of the Honorable Chairperson Solomon Ayele Derso, and supported by the Secretariat for your tireless efforts towards the promotion and protection of human rights as the leading continental organ with a mandate on human rights in Africa. My office stands in partnership with you in this noble endeavor. I thank you for your attention and I wish you fruitful deliberations.
Thank you. We are grateful for Madame Bachelet's statement to this 68th ordinary session. I now have the pleasure to invite Honorable Ndaisenga Joseph, Chairperson of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, to deliver his statement. Honorable Joseph, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Excellence, Monsieur Mamadou Tangara, ministre des Affaires étrangères de la République de Gambie. Excellence, distingué représentant des États partis qui seraient en train de nous suivre en ligne. Excellence, Bankore Adeyoy, commissaire chargé des Affaires politiques, paix et sécurité, et représentant du président de la Commission de l'Union africaine dans ces cérémonies. Honorable commissaire Solomon Derso, président de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Honorable juge Sylvain Auré, président de la Cour africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Honorable commissaire membre de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Excellence Madame Michelle Bachelet, commissaire des Nations Unies aux droits de l'homme. Excellence Monsieur Eyamon Gilmore, représentant spécial de l'Union européenne pour les droits de l'homme, Dr Elasto Mugwadi, président de la Commission des droits de l'homme au Zimbabwe et en même temps vice-président du réseau des institutions nationales africaines des droits de l'homme, Madame Hannah Forster, représentant le comité directeur du Forum des organisations non gouvernementales, distingués participants, Mesdames et Messieurs, tout protocole observé. C'est avec un grand plaisir que je prends la parole ce matin au nom du Comité africain d'experts sur les droits et le bien-être de l'enfant à l'occasion de ces cérémonies d'ouverture de la 68e session de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Je voudrais remercier l'honorable président de la commission, Solomon Derso, pour avoir invité notre comité dans ces cérémonies. Et du même coup, vous remercier, Monsieur le Président, pour avoir délégué l'honorable Remingo Ilumbu, votre vice-président, au niveau des cérémonies d'ouverture de notre 37e session. Et également, vous remercier pour l'engagement qui a été réitéré en vue de poursuivre la collaboration dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre des instruments en charge des droits de l'homme en général et des droits de l'enfant en particulier. Je voudrais aussi remercier l'ensemble des honorables commissaires pour l'appui multiforme qu'ils apportent au comité dans la mise en œuvre de ce mandat et remercier également les distingués participants dans ces cérémonies d'ouverture. Excellences, honorables distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, ma présence dans ces cérémonies est donc la preuve de la complémentarité que nous avons en tant qu'organe de l'Union africaine en charge des droits de l'homme. En effet, C'est devenu maintenant une habitude et un privilège pour les trois organes en charge des droits de l'homme de montrer la collaboration qui existe entre nous. Et cela va en s'étendant dans la mise en œuvre de nos décisions par les États membres de l'Union africaine. Il y a lieu de continuer le lobbying pour que ces décisions soient plus comprises et acceptées par les standards d'obligation, car une décision n'est jamais contre un État pour un citoyen, mais pour réaffirmer la place du citoyen dans l'État. Excellences, honorables distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, la pandémie de la COVID-19 qui frappe le monde entier depuis plus d'un an a des conséquences négatives sur la mise en œuvre des droits de l'homme en général et des droits de l'enfant en particulier. Il avait été dit que les enfants étaient épargnés ou ne développaient pas les formes sévères de la maladie. Les statistiques que les États membres ont partagées avec le comité lors de la commémoration du 30e anniversaire de la Charte africaine des droits du bien-être de l'enfant en novembre 2020 ont montré que non seulement les enfants pouvaient contracter la maladie et en plus font partie des victimes dans la plupart des pays. C'est pourquoi le comité appelle les États membres à prendre en compte la spécificité de la prise en charge des enfants dans les protocoles de prise en charge de la pandémie de la COVID-19. Aussi, certaines dispositions de la charte qui protègent les enfants ont été suspendues au cours de cette pandémie quant à l'offre des services sociaux de base pour les enfants. Les confinements et la suspension des classes ont aussi entraîné une augmentation des cas de violation des droits de l'enfant, comme le mariage des enfants, le viol et les violences sexuelles, l'exploitation sexuelle des enfants en ligne et aussi les mutilations génitales féminines. C'est pourquoi le comité, après avoir élaboré une note d'orientation à l'attention des États membres de l'Union africaine sur la COVID-19 et ses implications sur les droits et le bien-être des enfants, est en train d'élaborer une étude continentale sur l'impact de la COVID-19 sur les droits et le bien-être des enfants en Afrique. Cette étude va permettre d'évaluer l'impact de la pandémie sur la mise en œuvre des aspirations de l'agenda 2040 pour les enfants d'Afrique. Il s'agira, entre autres, de recueillir les bonnes pratiques pour atténuer l'impact de la pandémie sur les enfants et prédire l'impact de la pandémie dans un avenir proche en se basant sur les tendances du continent. J'invite tous les participants à appuyer le comité dans cette étude, notamment à travers le partage avec différents États membres de bonnes pratiques qui vont être dégagées. Le comité entend aussi élaborer cette année, et on l'espère, conjointement avec la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples, un commentaire général sur l'article 21 de la Charte. L'article est stipulé comme suit. Protection contre les pratiques sociales et culturelles néfastes qui guidera ce commentaire guidera l'ensemble des États membres de l'Union africaine sur la mise en œuvre des différents articles de nos instruments juridiques. Excellences, honorables distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, l'année passée, j'ai informé cette auguste assemblée de l'élaboration des directives que le comité a élaborées en vue d'accorder le statut d'affilié aux organisations nationales des droits de l'homme qui en font la demande. Et depuis lors, aucune demande n'a encore été reçue par le comité. C'est pourquoi je voudrais informer les organisations ici présentes qu'une diffusion de ces directives sera faite au cours de cette année en collaboration avec le réseau des institutions nationales africaines des droits de l'homme. Le travail des organisations nationales des droits de l'homme est très important pour le comité dans la mesure où elles appuieront dans la mise en œuvre de la charte en général, mais aussi les décisions sur les communications, les recommandations et observations finales. Excellences, honorables invités, mesdames et messieurs. La collaboration avec les organes de l'Union africaine que nous appelons à ce renforcement doit s'étendre aux mécanismes spéciaux que nos deux organes ont en commun. En effet, 4 groupes de travail sont maintenant prêts à apporter les contributions au travail du comité. Il s'agit là, par rapport à ce travail, le groupe de travail sur les droits de l'enfant et le changement climatique, le groupe de travail sur les droits de l'enfant et les entreprises, les droits des enfants vivant avec handicap et le dernier, plus interne, le suivi de la mise en œuvre des décisions et recommandations du comité. Lors de la dernière session, le groupe de travail sur les enfants affectés par les conflits armés a été également créé et les membres seront sélectionnés incessamment. Le renforcement de la collaboration avec la Commission entre les groupes de travail peut s'étendre aux rapporteurs thématiques pour les activités sur le terrain, dont les investigations et les établissements des faits. Excellences, honorables, distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, avant de terminer mon propos, je voudrais vous informer que le secrétariat du comité est opérationnel depuis le 20 décembre 2020 à Maseru, au royaume de Lesotho. Cette délocalisation hors du siège de la Commission de l'Union africaine pourrait apporter plus de visibilité au travail du comité. C'est le lieu ici de remercier la Commission de l'Union africaine à travers son président, Excellence Moussa Faki Mahamat, pour son appui continu au travail du comité et exprimer ma sincère gratitude au royaume du Lesotho pour avoir accueilli le secrétariat du comité et l'aider à bien s'installer dans le pays. J'aimerais aussi exhorter les 5 États qui n'ont pas encore ratifié la Charte africaine sur les droits et le bien-être de l'enfant à le faire, et ceux qui ont émis des réserves, ils sont à 4, à les retirer pour que tous les enfants en Afrique puissent bénéficier de la pleine et entière protection de la Charte. Je voudrais en fait souhaiter une bonne session et de fructueuses délibérations à la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you, Honorable Ndaisenga. Thank you indeed for your statement and for the expressions of collaboration, the opportunities to deepen the collaboration that the committee has with the Commission. Thank you, sir. It is now my pleasure to invite the President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Justice Sylvan Ore, to make his statement. Honorable Ore, you have the floor.
Honorable président de la Commission africaine des droits de
l'homme. We are struggling to hear you. I think either your network or your connection is unclear. Yeah. Would you like, Honorable Ore, that we take the statement of the next speaker to allow you to adjust your system.
Okay. Yes, no problem.
Thank you, Justice Ore. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite the pre-recorded statement of Honorable Mamadou Tangara, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad of the Republic of the Gambia, to deliver his statement. Thank you.
His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamad, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Commissioner Dr. Solomon Aile Dersu, Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Her Excellency Michel Bachelet, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Excellencies representing the African Union member states, distinguished representative of NGOs and human rights institutions, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. I'm honored to have been invited to deliver this speech on behalf of all the member states of the African Union. I avail myself of this opportunity to extend to you fraternal greetings and best wishes from His Excellency President Adam Barrow, the government and people of the Gambia on the occasion of the 68th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Peoples and Human Rights. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, having witnessed the 67th Ordinary Session of the Commission in 2020, we give all praises to the Almighty God for granting us the opportunity once again to participate in this current Ordinary Session of the Commission, while praying for the soul of all those who have departed this world as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic or otherwise. We fully recognize the fact that despite all the odds and limited resources at our disposal, the African continent has been able to relatively contain the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic through perseverance, partnership, absolute commitment and dedication to the promotion of the right to health and ensuring access to affordable health and services and facilities. Although our governments responded to the fight against the pandemic by declaring state of emergency, instituting curfews and partial lockdowns and implementing other measures to encourage social distancing, we are also not left behind in facilitating our citizens' access to the COVID vaccine and other related medical services free of charge or at least at reasonable affordable cost. Excellencies, honorable representatives, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the conclusions of the 67th Ordinary Session of the Commission have highlighted our following shortcomings as state parties to the African Charter. 1. High rise of unemployment and lower living standards leading to increase in extreme poverty and starvation. 2. Increase in violent armed conflicts and socio-political and governance crisis. 3. Continued prevalence of sexual and gender-based violence. 4. Continued unlawful use of the armed and security forces in violating human and people's rights in all aspects and forms. And 5. Prevalence of corruption and poor governance systems. In view of the above mentioned limitations and challenges, the state parties have fully cognizance of the responsibilities of our government in making sure that our citizens continue to enjoy their full rights, including a life free from fear and the threat of violence. Therefore, despite the challenges faced in addressing the root causes of human rights violations, the state parties are once again committed to support and closely work with the Commission with a common sense of purpose guided by the Commission's motto, human rights, our collective responsibility. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, whilst recognizing the effective implementation of its mandate, we wish to seize this opportunity to commend the Commission for the continuous guidance given to the state parties to the African Charter in pursuance of their obligation under the Charter. We also fully recognize and value the important opportunity provided by the sessions of the Commission where all stakeholders converge to discuss ways and means of developing and promoting human rights system and agenda. We further take serious note of the conclusions and recommendations of the Commission session and recommit ourselves to closely consult and collaborate with the Commission and the African Court on Human and People's Rights to ensure that their recommendations and decisions are satisfactorily implemented. Excellency, Mr. Chair, Passage. On the home front, I wish to inform you that the government of the Gambia continues to remain cautious and unwavering in reviewing and intensifying measures to prevent, contain, and manage the spread of the virus within our borders. As of April 9, 2021, the Gambia recorded a total of 5,602 COVID-19 cases, out of which 5,145 have recovered, and unfortunately, 168 died. We currently have 38 active cases under treatment. As part of its preventive measures, the government is currently rolling out a vaccination program where more and more people are coming out to get themselves vaccinated. With regards to our transitional justice processes, I wish to inform you that the government has initiated a process of dialogue with the leadership of all political parties with a view to building consensus on all the consensus issues raised in the draft Constitution 2020, with a view to submitting the draft to the National Assembly. The Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission is on its final phase, and we hope to receive its final report in June 2021. The government is already preparing in anticipation for post-TRRC activities, and a multi-sectoral task force or working group will be constituted very soon to coordinate this process. The advent of COVID-19 has also occasioned a delay in the enactment of a number of bills submitted to the National Assembly for enactment between 2020 and 2021. Following the tabling of the Criminal Offences Bill, the Criminal Procedure Bill, the Prohibition of Torture Bill, amongst others, we seek to radically transform our criminal justice system to bring it in line with modern criminal justice norms and practices. In preparation for the next cycle of national election from December 2021, a review of the Elections Act has been carried out following consultation with the Independent Electoral Commission and stakeholders. The election bill has been sent to the National Assembly in December for the December session. The National Human Rights Commission is now fully operational, and as part of its function, the Commission routinely embarks on monitoring institutions with statutory obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights obligations. The government and people of the Gambia are always guided by a common principle in the quest to jealously nurture and guard their precious natural resources, namely peace and stability. This is reinforced by a society for all in which every individual, each with rights and responsibility, has an active role to play. Moreover, the government of the Gambia is fully conscious of its obligation to ensure respect and protection of fundamental human rights of everyone, rule of law, due process and equitable right to access fair and impartial justice, and other alternative dispute resolution mechanisms and facilities. It is part of the Gambia's government's socio-economic development agenda to implement policies and strategies to eliminate all forms of discrimination, including discrimination against women, girls, the physically challenged, children, and minorities based on race, tribe, and etc. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as the 68th ordinary session of the Commission provides us the opportunity to convey once again our stakeholders to take stock and reflect on what has been accomplished and the challenges to be addressed to improve human rights in all forms and aspects at national, regional, and continental levels. We wish to seize this opportunity to pray for and pay tribute to our founding fathers for building the foundation and pillars of this very important and admirable institution, the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, which by no accident is situated in Banjul, the capital city of the Gambia, a country historically known for championing human rights in Africa and beyond. On behalf of the state parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, I wish to register our sincere gratitude to all the commissioners and all the members of the Commission for their tireless, relentless, and invaluable efforts in advancing human and people's rights across the continent of Africa for the ultimate objective of achieving a just, developed, and peaceful environment for all to live in. While wishing you a very fruitful session, I thank you all for your kind attention.
Our gratitude to the Honorable Minister for his statement on behalf of state parties to the African Charter. Thank you. At this stage, we will revert to Honorable Justice Ore. Justice Ore, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you once again. Excellence, Monsieur Bankole Adewole. Can you hear me now? Yes. Excellence, Monsieur Bankole Adewole, commissaire aux affaires politiques, représentant donc le président de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Honorable Dr Solomon Ayele Derso, président de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Honorable commissaire, distingués représentants, mesdames et messieurs, en vos rangs et grades. Permettez, avant de commencer mon propos, que je réitère à la Commission africaine mes condoléances que je vous avais déjà adressées par correspondance. Au moment où s'ouvre la 68e et première session de l'année 2021 de la Commission africaine, il me plaît tout d'abord d'adresser mes félicitations à la Commission et surtout à son président pour l'immense travail abattu en 2020, en dépit des multiples restrictions que nous a malheureusement imposées la crise sanitaire liée à la pandémie du Covid-19. En effet, nul n'aurait imaginé l'ampleur que prendrait cette crise sanitaire et son impact négatif sur la mise en œuvre de nos programmes et projets. Mais avec sagacité et détermination, vous avez su développer des solutions et adopter de nouvelles méthodes de travail qui vous ont permis de tenir régulièrement vos sessions, d'examiner les affaires pendantes et de répondre ainsi aux besoins des milliers de citoyens africains qui légitimement espéraient que leurs droits et libertés soient protégés et promus. Alors que nous espérions des jours meilleurs, force est de constater que l'humanité entière n'est pas encore au bout de la crise et le malaise social, ainsi que l'inquiétude quant à l'avenir des droits de l'homme sur notre continent, s'accentue de jour en jour, presque délétère, si je peux me permettre l'expression. La collaboration interinstitutionnelle, le dialogue et l'échange des expériences sont autant de moyens qui nous permettront de mieux capitaliser nos ressources pour atteindre de meilleurs résultats. La Cour tient ainsi à réaffirmer sa disponibilité, son entière disponibilité, bien entendu, à renforcer sa coopération avec les autres organes de l'Union africaine ayant un mandat en matière de droits de l'homme, ainsi qu'avec toutes les bonnes volontés et prise d'une meilleure protection des droits de l'homme en Afrique. En effet, les nombreux défis en matière de droits de l'homme ne nous laissent pas d'autre choix que de renforcer nos actions individuellement et collectivement. La Cour africaine saisira également l'occasion de son 15e anniversaire cette année et de l'adoption de son 3e plan stratégique 2021-2025 pour se lancer dans un vaste programme de consolidation de son action qui passera par le renforcement de la coopération avec toutes les parties prenantes aux droits de l'homme, le développement d'une politique judiciaire, la consolidation de son travail judiciaire, l'amélioration de la confiance des États membres dans les décisions de la Cour en vue d'accroître le taux de leur exécution. Comme je le disais dans mon allocution à votre 67e session ordinaire l'année passée, devant cette même tribune, la Cour et la Commission sont appelés à œuvrer ensemble pour la même cause, celle du respect. Pour y parvenir, nous devons, en dépit de nos différences, mettre tout en œuvre pour consolider et rendre plus agissants les rapports de complémentarité entre la Cour et la Commission, en conformité avec les dispositions du protocole portant création de la Cour. Mais également, bien entendu, en respectant les règlements respectifs des deux organes. Cet appel sans cesse répété à la complémentarité n'est pas anodin. Il traduit les attentes de milliers de citoyens qui désirent saisir l'opportunité qui leur est offerte par les dispositions du protocole de pouvoir saisir la Cour contre les États qui n'auraient pas fait la déclaration d'acceptation de la compétence de la Cour à recevoir directement les requêtes émanant des individus et des ONG. Dans un mois environ, la Cour africaine va accueillir de nouveaux juges et la présidence de la Cour sera à coup sûr assurée par un autre juge que moi. Mais déjà, je voudrais, au nom de tous mes collègues juges et en mon nom personnel, renouveler à la Commission africaine, à votre commission, notre soutien et espérer que les liens de fraternité qui ont toujours existé entre nos deux organes se développent davantage, surtout avec la nouvelle équipe. C'est donc dans cet élan d'appel à une solidarité continue que je voudrais terminer le message de la Cour en souhaitant plein succès aux travaux de la 68e session ordinaire de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Je vous remercie.
Thank you most sincerely, Justice Ore, for your statement, which highlights the need for complementarity and collaboration between the court and the commission, as emphasized in the court's new strategic plan. Thank you, Justice Ore. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, and with great honor, I now wish to invite the chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Honorable Solomon Ayele Deso, to deliver his statement, and as he does so, also to formally declare the 68th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights open. Honorable Deso, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Acting Secretary of the Commission and our moderator of this opening session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. I would like to start off by wishing you all a very good morning, good afternoon from wherever you have joined us today. With your kind permission, dear colleagues and excellencies, may I proceed standing on the existing protocol that have already been established and with all due protocol observed, please. I would like to state that I am very pleased to welcome all of you to this 68th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. It is really very great honor to see the company of the African Union Commission through the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, His Excellency Ambassador Bankole, representing His Excellency the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the company of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, the European Union, the representative of states parties to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, our sister organs of the Union, the African Court, the African Committee of Experts, and indeed national human rights institutions and civil society organizations. Your collaboration and presence is so important for the noble objective and indeed mandate that this commission is interested in the promotion and protection of human rights. So I wish to thank you all for once again gracing this opening session with your presence, but also with the message that you have communicated. Excellencies, distinguished participants. During the last session, I expressed the hope that we may be meeting in person. And clearly my hope didn't come to pass. And here we are once again conducting our session virtually. And I do hope, as Madam Acting Secretary indicated, that you would bear with us as we try to make this virtual session as smooth as possible. I am cognizant of the fact that we are commencing this session at a time when the 27th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda is being observed. Accordingly, allow me, Excellencies and colleagues, to once again pay my respect for the nearly 1 million lives brutally killed during that most catastrophic tragedy in the history of the continent outside of the colonial era and the transatlantic slave trade. I also wish to once again extend the solidarity of our Commission with all the survivors. The lessons from this tragedy requires us all to be vigilant and mobilize collectively against the ever-present threat of the occurrence of the conditions that precipitate genocide or other forms of mass atrocities, including the propagation of hate, the dehumanization of certain members of society on account of their identity, whatever their identity is, and the incitement of violence, as well as the indiscriminate use of force. Excellencies, distinguished participants, as we complete the first quarter of the new year, let's keep in mind that the fight against COVID-19 is far from over. To the contrary, the fight is as fierce as it has been since the advent of the pandemic last year. Our continent, which had been spared the full brunt of the pandemic during the early stages, is now experiencing the pandemic more acutely. Today, the situation has become extremely alarming. The continent has come to grips with new strains of the virus, which are more contagious and difficult to detect. As African countries face a second wave of the pandemic, there are clear warning signs that our already fragile health systems are becoming even more strained. In many countries, hospitals are filled, and there is a shortage of ventilators. While Africa's fatality rates from COVID-19 were previously lower than the global average, they are now well above the global average. In the month of January 2021, the average fatality rate on the continent reached a peak of 3.7% compared to the global average of 2.2% during the same period. In the same month, there was also a 40% surge in the number of deaths, which have led to the unwelcomed milestone of the continent surpassing the 100,000 total days from COVID-19. As days from COVID-19 knocks on the doors of our families and our communities, we are counting the untimely loss of brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, While the primary effects of COVID-19 on the right to health and life has been clear for all to see, we must also remember that the pandemic continues to have other ramifications that impact on the enjoyment of a whole host of other fundamental human and people's rights. The socioeconomic effects of the pandemic have been costly. As the pandemic is still ongoing, however, its full effects can't be predicted with certainty at this stage, and much will depend on how quickly this pandemic is brought under control. And the socioeconomic effects of this pandemic has become clear to outlast the virus itself. The pandemic has exacerbated existing inequalities, has disproportionately affected vulnerable groups within our societies. During the pandemic, we have also witnessed an unprecedented rise in sexual and gender-based violence, highlighting the pervasiveness of gender oppression across the continent. I wish to once again highlight the 9 thematic press statements that the Commission released in order to provide guidance to member states on compliance with their obligations under the Charter. On behalf of the Commission, I also wish to call on states to respect the principles and values espoused in Resolution 449 of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which provides comprehensive standards and principles on how states ensure that their response to the pandemic are guided by and respectful of the rights and freedoms enshrined in the African Charter. Excellencies, distinguished participants, it is evident that the threat of COVID-19 can only be fully addressed when equitable distribution and access to vaccines is guaranteed, as Madam Bachelet in her speech highlighted. The sad reality, however, is that our continent represents less than 2% of the total number of vaccine doses administered globally at this point in time. Africa, left completely behind in access to the vaccine, is paying dearly in so many ways, including with the lives of its already very scarce medical workforce. A media report that came out yesterday, carrying the pleading of Sudan's health workers for COVID-19 vaccines, cited sources from Sudan Ministry of Health that more than 200 Sudanese doctors, nurses, and medical doctors have died from the COVID-19 pandemic. The same pattern repeats itself almost across the continent. Africa, like much of the developing world, is left behind due to the artificial scarcity that the twine conditions of vaccine nationalism and market-based approach to the production and distribution of the vaccine have created. As we pointed out as far back as August 2020 in our Commission's Resolution 449, a more reliable way forward in order to end this artificial scarcity is to ensure, quote, arrangements are made for the production and distribution of the vaccine on the African continent, end quote. This obviously requires that specific measures are taken to have the COVID-19 vaccine declared a global public good, that know-how and technology on the production of the vaccine is shared with all countries, and the capacities of countries on the continent for manufacturing of the vaccine is used and enhanced. In this context, I wish to welcome the decision of the 34th Assembly of the African Union held in February 2021, calling for a waiver from the obligations of the TRIPS agreement, specifically for the prevention, containment, and treatment of COVID-19, waiver of patents as far as the COVID-19 vaccine is concerned. I also applaud the African Union for the convening of a high-level meeting during the past 2 days on the development and manufacturing of vaccines by Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the strategic importance of creating this capacity for the health and life of our people on the continent. Excellencies, fellow Africans, since the last organization of the African Commission, we continue to monitor the situation of human rights on the continent, and we have been seized with concerning human rights situations. We at the African Commission are deeply concerned about events that exhibit the utter lack of regard to the sanctity of human life. The recent attack in Palma town by a terrorist group operating in the Cabo Delgado province of Mozambique is but only one such example, where many fellow Africans lost their irreplaceable lives needlessly and so brutally. Our Commission condemns such barbaric acts in the strongest terms possible. It is with a heavy heart that we also learned the violence in Cabo Delgado has displaced nearly 1 million people, among whom the overwhelming majority facing severe hunger. In my other capacity as the chairperson of the Working Group on Extractive Industries, Environmental and Human Rights Violations, I can't help but also note the link between natural resource development in Cabo Delgado and the conflict that is unfolding in that province, where extremists have taken advantage of local grievances, including frustrations about the inability of the locals to fully benefit and participate from gas exploration of Cabo Delgado's coast. We also express grave concern about the increasing insurgency, spread and brutality of these terrorist violence in Cabo Delgado, which heightens the responsibility of the Mozambique state for addressing the increasing threat this situation poses to the well-being and lives of people in the affected region. And its responsibilities has become heightened to address this threat through not only enhanced security measures in collaboration with countries in the region and on the continent as well as the UN, but also through comprehensive social, economic, and governance interventions. I wish to indicate that all such response measures have to be in full compliance with human rights, or else they risk total failure, as experiences from other parts of the continent have demonstrated. The Commission, therefore, while calling for investigations into alleged violations perpetrated by security personnel in their attempt to contain the insurgency, violations including arbitrary arrest, torture, and summary executions, urge Mozambique that security personnel operate within the bounds of human rights law and international humanitarian law, paying particular attention to the Commission's principles and guidelines on human and people's rights while countering terrorism in Africa. It's also disheartening that there has been increase in violence in many parts of the continent, with disastrous consequences to the lives and well-being of many people. These include the recurrent and spreading terrorist violence in the Sahel and Lake Chad Basin region, as well as in Somalia and the Horn of Africa. In all these situations, it is very distressing that the vast majority of victims of these acts of terrorist violence are civilians, including children. Our Commission is also deeply concerned about the situations of violence witnessed in a number of countries, including Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Sudan, among others. In Ethiopia, the Commission continues to express its deep concern about the conflict in Tigray and the accompanying human rights violations, including reports of sexual violence, such as rape, arbitrary and extrajudicial executions of civilians, mass displacement, lack of access to basic necessities for a large number of the civilian population, and the destruction of civilian infrastructure. The Commission also expresses its concern about recent events of violence that led to the loss of many lives in other parts of the country, particularly in Oromia, Benshangul Gumuz, Afar and Somali regions border, and in Wallo. The Commission reiterates its condemnation of all human rights violations and its call for the need for addressing the conditions precipitating these violations. The Commission is also alarmed by the escalation of violence in the Darfur region of Sudan. The ongoing violence has left many dead and forced more people to cross the border into eastern Chad. The latest episode of violence started in West Darfur province on 15 January, spilled into the South Darfur province, costing the lives of 250 people, including 3 humanitarian workers. The Commission urges the government of Sudan to take all the necessary measures in order to extend protection to people who are affected by this violence and ensure that such violence doesn't happen again. The Commission is also concerned by the use of excessive force in the context of protest events in Senegal and South Africa, among others. These took place, for example, on the 3rd and 15th of March, respectively, leading to injuries and deaths. The Commission also condemns the attack on 2 journalists by Ugandan security personnel on 17 February. The Commission also remains concerned by the spate of kidnappings in northern Nigeria. This persistent threat makes it harder for children, particularly the attacks on schools, to fully benefit from their right to education. The Commission is also concerned about the constitutional crisis in Somalia and the ensuing increasing political tension resulting from the lack of consensus among Somali's political leaders on the convening of elections within the framework of the 17 September 2020 agreement. Unless this situation is resolved peacefully, it stands to gravely endanger the relative peace and stability achieved over the course of the past several years, and the example Somalia had set in peaceful transfer of power for the Horn of Africa region for a number of years. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, despite the many challenges we faced during the early parts of this year, there are also positive developments to highlight and indeed celebrate. We welcome the decision of the Republic of South Sudan to establish the transitional justice institutions in accordance with Chapter 5 of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan. We welcome the peace process in the state of Libya, including the signing of a ceasefire agreement by the opposing parties and the formation of an interim unity government to lead the country until elections are held on 24 December 2021. We encourage the parties in Libya to abide by the terms of their agreement and sustain the peace in Libya. We also welcome the decision of the Republic of Kenya to grant citizenship to 1,670 members of the Shona community and 1,300 stateless people of Rwandan origin. The Commission wishes at this point to urge the government of Kenya to extend the same legal status to other groups who may find themselves in a similar situation or at risk of being stateless. We further congratulate the Republic of Niger for its first peaceful transfer of power, which is critical for the process of democratization and indeed for establishing peace, stability, and security in Niger, and also ensure the promotion and protection of human rights. We condemn at the African Commission the attempted coup that took place in Niger ahead of the swearing-in ceremony of the new president. The Commission also notes the peaceful conduct of elections in the Republic of Djibouti, the Republic of Benin, and the Republic of Chad. We also commend the peaceful transfer of power in Tanzania following the untimely demise of the former president of that country. I also wish to join Ambassador Bankole in welcoming the establishment and operationalization of the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia. At the African Commission, we look forward to welcoming the Gambia's National Human Rights Commission to the family of human rights institutions with affiliate status before the African Commission. Dear friends, as there is much to do during this year, I take this opportunity to encourage our Commission, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, and the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child to remain steadfast in their commitment to discharge their noble responsibilities firmly, without fear or favor. I also wish to call on natural rights and civil society organizations to enhance their role in the fight for the promotion and protection of human rights on our continent. I also wish to encourage ordinary Africans whose indomitable spirit still shines despite the difficulties they face every day, including by being failed by their own governments, for them to continue with renewed strength in their effort to exercise their rights and freedoms and hold power accountable throughout this year. For purpose of our session, I wish to commend and welcome the submission of state reports of Niger, Benin, and Malawi, which we look forward to reviewing during the course of this session. As I commend these countries and others that submitted their state reports, I also wish to use this opportunity to call on other states parties to fulfill their reporting obligations under Articles 62 of the African Charter, Article 26 of the Maputo Protocol, and 14 of the Kampala Convention. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, this year is special. It is a year that marks the 40th anniversary of the adoption of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, a unique normative instrument that underpins the entire African human rights system. An instrument that has made important contributions to a greater expansion and understanding of human and people's rights, both on the continent and at the global level. The African Charter is the holy book of the African human rights system, born out of our history and reflecting our values and aspirations. Our charter promises every person and all peoples on the continent a comprehensive set of rights and freedoms, although this promise remains far from reality. We all have to rise to the challenge that this presents to us to ensure that everyone on our continent, without discrimination and on an equal basis, enjoys the rights and freedoms that our charter promises. I therefore wish to call on states parties, the African Court, the African Committee of Experts, and HRIs and civil society organizations to use this 40th anniversary of the African Charter as an opportunity for organizing events in order to mobilize and draw attention towards adopting steps that should be taken for bridging the gap between the promise of the African Charter and the lived realities of the peoples of our continent. Excellencies, dear sisters and brothers, this year is also the African Union Year of the Arts, Culture, and Heritage, levers for building the Africa we want. This theme draws attention to fundamental issues that we often take for granted. Culture, arts, and heritage are not simply matters that concern only cultural institutions, artists, those working in the field of archaeology, anthropology, and history. Culture, arts, and heritage relate to the tangible and intangible cultural, aesthetic, religious expressions and work, including natural sites of cultural and spiritual significance that serve as sources for the development of individuals and communities. These are sources of reference through which individuals and communities define and choose what is meaningful and good in life, and hence the framework through which they exercise their freedom. Culture, arts, and heritage give content to our essence as human beings and serve as fundamental source of inspiration for scientific, artistic, and development innovations and creativity for all societies, as well as for addressing challenges facing our societies, including the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the pressing human rights challenge of our time, namely deepening inequalities, widespread poverty, gender oppression, racism, the democratic governance deficit, and the climate emergency. Indeed, how can there be dignity, freedom, and equality outside of the culture and heritage of individuals and their societies? how can there be human-centered development and democracy and overall progress that is not inspired by and founded on the culture and heritage of any human rights respecting society? The protection and promotion of the culture, heritage, and arts of a society is accordingly a prerequisite both for enjoying all human rights and freedoms, but also and for access to participation in and enjoyment of the cultural life of a society by individuals and communities. That is why the threat to the culture and heritage of a person or a community is at its core a threat to the very being of the person, to the very being of the community, a threat whose occurrence leads to the diminishing of not only the very being of such person and community, but also the diminishing of all of us. That is why we should be outraged about the threat of extinction facing various languages, cultures, and heritage on our continent. The culture, heritage, and language, particularly of minorities and indigenous peoples. That is why we should all condemn the theft and destruction of historical sites, artifacts, cultural and religious institutions. That is why the call for the return of African cultural, religious, and artistic artifacts and heritage stolen during the colonial era is a matter of human rights for us Africans. That's why we all should join and champion this call for the return of our cultural, religious, and historical artifacts and heritage as part of the promotion of our rights and restoration of these rights for access to and enjoyment of our culture and historical heritage. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my opening remark, it will be remiss of me if I don't take the opportunity for commending and applauding national human rights institutions, particularly the convening institution, NANRI, for holding the second forum of national human rights institutions on participation in the African Commission's session, ahead of this session. I also wish to commend similarly the civil society organizations that convened the NGO forum on participation in the session of the African Commission ahead of this session as well. I can't emphasize enough the role that NHRIs and civil society organizations play and the importance of these forums. We look forward to receive the outcome and conclusions of these two forums. At this point, I wish to extend a warm invitation for the active participation of states delegates, NHRIs, and civil society organizations at this 68th organization, as your participation is critical for the success of this session. I also wish to commend the hard work put into the preparation of this virtual session and sincerely thank all my colleagues for their collaboration and diligence. Last but never least, may I also take this opportunity to wish my Muslim sisters and brothers Ramadan Kareem, and to wish us all to have the blessings of this holy month of Ramadan to conduct and conclude our session productively. I now have the singular honor of declaring this 68th organization of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights officially open. I sincerely thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson Deso, for your deep and expansive reflections on various human rights situations in Africa, expressions of concern, calls to action, expressions of appreciation, and for finally declaring the 68th Ordinary Session open. Thank you, Your Excellency. This brings us now to the end of the formal or ceremonial part of the session, which is the opening session. And I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Commission, Their Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, for gracing this opening ceremony with your presence. I would like to inform Excellencies and delegates that the program has not come to an end. At this point, all dignitaries, delegates, and participants will be invited to observe a health break of 30 minutes, whilst the Commission retreats into a private session to adopt its public session agenda. When the Commission resumes, we hope that you will continue to participate in these rich debates that have been outlined in the session's agenda that is on our website. For today, the agenda will be concerned with human rights situation in Africa, and we invite you to be a part of this discussion. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the time now is 11:30 or almost 11:40 in Banjul in the Gambia. We will then resume at 12:10 GMT. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you in 30 minutes time. Thank you. You may remain connected to this channel or reconnect on the same link that has been given to you. But we look forward certainly to receiving you in 30 minutes time for the public debates as per the adopted agenda that the Commission will emerge with from its private session. Thank you.